Hey, good morning. Thank you all for coming. My name is Cam Levin. I'm the president of the Peoria Police Officers Association and the vice president of the Arizona Police Officers Association. The APA represents 12,000 rank and file federal, state, and county and municipal law enforcement, correction, probation officers throughout the state of Arizona. The Superintendent of Public Instruction is not an election that we normally engage in. However, in today's world, with the dangers presented to our schools and the challenges our children face, we believe it's imperative to have the right person for the job. For someone like Kathy Hoffman to have tweeted, "We should not increase SROs because we know that discrimination does not stop at the door," it's not right. I myself have 4 children in schools, and I love when I drop my kids off at school and see those SROs at school for the protection and the example that they show to all of our children. We believe that school SROs provide the best protection to our children and invaluable mentorship to students. For decades, police officers in the schools have contributed to a safe environment for learning and brought police and community together. Most remember fondly from their school, their SROs, officer friendly, or the DARE program. That's why today the APA is proud to announce our endorsement of Frank Riggs as Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction. Frank Riggs' prior education and congressional experience more than qualifies him to be an Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction. Mr. Riggs' prior experience as a police officer uniquely qualifies him to understand the value of having a police officer in the educational environment, both setting a positive example and protecting our most treasured possession, our children and our future. I'd like to turn the time over to Sean Madsen, the Vice President of the state of the FOP. Thank you.
Good morning. As Cam said, my name is Sean Madsen. I'm the Vice President of the State of Arizona Fraternal Order of Police. It's with great pleasure we would like to announce our endorsement of Superintendent of Public Instruction, Frank Riggs. As Cam was saying, this is not normally a race that public safety weighs in on. However, the race came to our doorstep at the irresponsible social media statements made by his opponent. It concerns me that she would make such statements that would label us with a broad brush and demonstrate her bias against law enforcement. What further encourages our endorsement of Mr. Riggs is the fact that he has a plan, and he has a plan to protect our children that go to school every day, that deserve to do so in a safe environment. I appreciate him demonstrating his leadership. He has a long history of leadership as opposed to his opponent, and his leadership style, as well as his knowledge and efforts on several school boards and within the workings of government. I appreciate his passion. I appreciate his history of law enforcement, and that is why the Arizona State Fraternal Order of Police is endorsing Frank Riggs for Superintendent of Public Instruction. And with that, I'll turn the mic over to County Attorney Bill Montgomery, who would like to say a few words. Thanks.
Thanks, Sean. And I want to thank the Arizona Police Association, Fraternal Order Police, for their support of Frank Riggs for Superintendent of Public Instruction. And I'm here today for really 3 particular reasons. Number 1, to underscore the role of school resource officers in protecting our children and the important role they play in presenting a positive role model for children in the school environment. Secondly, to underscore Frank's commitment to public service and what he brings to the position of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and then to highlight for Arizona voters as they consider who to vote for on the early ballots and in the run-up to November 6th, why the opponent's socialist political philosophy is inconsistent with what we need for school safety as well as what we need for leadership within Arizona. In terms of school resource officers, I've had 3 different opportunities to provide my views as the Maricopa County Attorney on the role that school resource officers and the program can play in protecting our children in the school setting. Whether providing feedback to Governor Doug Ducey as part of his school safety plan, along with the Yavapai and Pima County attorneys, the only remarks that I've offered in moving forward in providing for an enhanced safe environment for our children in schools, or in a forum sponsored by the Arizona Business and Education Coalition, in which law enforcement professionals met at a roundtable and engaged with school district officials from around the state. The role of school resource officers is critical. They are a deterrent while they're on campus from those who would seek to do harm to our children. They're also a positive role model for kids that they interact with on a daily basis. And this ridiculous assumption that by utilizing the valuable resources of school resource officers somehow contributes to a racist or discriminatory environment reflects on the reality of what a socialist political philosophy brings to this position and to Arizona's political climate. It's an us versus them mentality. Us against law enforcement, us against the wealthy, us against those who are socially mobile. That's not who Arizona is. School resource officers are an important part of that school environment. We should embrace their involvement, and we should look to them to help enhance safety on our school campuses. With respect to Frank Riggs, I've known Frank for over a decade. He brings a public servant's heart to this particular position. And with his own experience and involvement in public education, he's someone who's familiar with the role of the Superintendent of Public Instruction and can bring decades of wisdom and experience in public policy to bear. And that's what we need. We need people bringing solutions, not people bringing division. And on division, let's be real. Frank's opponent has as their senior political advisor an avowed socialist. That may be fine for playing games at wanting to play at politics, but it has no place when we talk about legitimate, concerted efforts to develop responsible public education policy. And the criticism of school resource officers and law enforcement is just one small example of how that type of approach doesn't work and doesn't fit for Arizona. And it's for all of those reasons that I join with the Arizona Police Association and the Fraternal Order of Police in offering my endorsement for Frank Riggs for Superintendent of Public Instruction. Whether it's public charter schools, public district schools, or other offerings within this state, we need someone like Frank Riggs. And with that, I'd like to introduce the next Arizona Superintendent of Public Instruction, Frank Riggs.
Thank you, Bill. Beautiful. Well, first of all, I want to thank Cam and Sean, and certainly my good friend Bill Montgomery, for being here, for their kind comments, for their distinguished law enforcement service and service in our criminal justice system. It is a true honor to have the endorsement of the Arizona Police Association and the Arizona Fraternal Order of Police, and certainly, again, my good friend and our county attorney, Bill Montgomery. You know, I actually wear a thin blue line wristband to remind me of really where I started. Right out of the Army as a police officer, and I've said this many times, how important law enforcement was in my life, because I actually met my wife-to-be, my wife now of 38 years, Kathy, who was a trailblazing female police officer. And I know that doesn't sound terribly romantic, but as a result, we have 3 wonderful children in this world, all grown and married up, who in turn have given us 6 absolutely precious and adorable grandchildren, who are my personal motivation for seeking the office of Superintendent of Public Instruction. A week ago tonight, my opponent, Ms. Hoffman, said in the AZ Central debate, quote, "We don't need a police officer leading our schools." This was on top of her prior statements claiming that somehow school resource officers engage in discriminatory practices. I think that shows just how dangerously naive and inexperienced she is, how willing she is to put her ideological views before the security of our schools and the safety of our educators and our students. I'm not just a former police officer, as Cam and Sean were kind enough to mention. I've been a public school board president, a congressman. I chaired the House of Representatives Subcommittee on Elementary and Secondary Education, and I was CEO for 10 years of a national education nonprofit that launched over 200 nonprofit charter schools in Arizona and 22 other states. And by the way, those were charter schools that were in economically depressed communities and served predominantly minority and low-income student populations. It was actually my work with juvenile offenders and at-risk students back in my law enforcement days when I was promoted and put in charge of all the crime prevention and community relations programs. So to my buddies in patrol, you guys get this, I was no longer a real cop. I was, I was a suit in administration, but I started doing a lot of work in schools with juvenile offenders and at-risk students. And I realized then that I wanted to do something in the education world that would be more proactive and preventative in nature and maybe deter these young people from a cycle of crime and drug use and gang involvement so they could go on to live productive and responsible adult lives. I believe a sworn, trained law enforcement officer in schools is a great thing. It's a necessary thing in this day and age. It helps deter violence and drug use, and it even gives children an opportunity to get to know law enforcement officers at a young age. My opponent believes that police officers in schools perpetuate racism and discrimination, as County Attorney Montgomery mentioned. But don't take my word for it. I want to close out our media conference with a couple of commentaries that were sent to me on an unsolicited basis by very, very knowledgeable people. The first is from Mark Jorenstad, who is the executive director of the Arizona School Administrators. He wrote me, "I heard some other exchanges between you and your opponent concerning school resource officers and accusations of bias against school resource officers. I know that the Arizona Department of Education has information on surveys that have been done with schools as part of SRO grants. These are grants that were made to particular school districts. Those surveys indicate positive reactions on the part of students and staff towards SROs. They do not confirm the perception of bias, nor do they confirm accusations of the school to prison pipeline, just the other way around. The Mesa reports, the Mesa School District reports in particular, indicate a very positive view of school resource officers. If you talk to high school principals in Arizona, they will tell you frankly that they value the collaboration and support they receive from SROs, and that SROs are skilled at building relationships with students. They are proactive, not reactive. And lastly, speaking of high school principals, the principal, Amy Sislak, the principal of University High in Tucson, sent me a notice. She said, "I am sad we don't have SROs at my school in the Tucson Unified School District. We don't have many behavior issues at my school, but my kids would benefit tremendously from the teachings of SROs as well as the feelings of safety and security that SROs provide. Our campus does not feel safe or protected. SROs build fantastic relationships with kids and make wonderful teaching moments, as well as help with education on the law. The SROs in my former school district, the Amphitheater School District, or AMPHI as it's called, in Northwest Pima County, are beloved and cherished by the kids and adults alike. They help teach a forensic science class, participated in funny skits and homecoming assemblies, and it is that time of year, and showed our kids daily that they loved them. Kids who were historically afraid of police or whose families were scared of police learned that our police are there to help them. We had police help kids make good choices and remove themselves from a life of crime that they may have been headed towards. How can we make sure this amazing resource continues in our school?" And my answer to Amy is, you want to continue SROs in our schools, give me the responsibility and honor of serving as Arizona's next Superintendent of Public Instruction. Thank you all for being here. Again, thank you to Sean and Bill and Cam. I very much appreciate the endorsements, and let's go on to victory here in a couple of weeks' time.